Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon. Today we're looking at a couple of malicious compliance stories. First one, military malicious compliance. Let's jump right in. We have compulsory military service here in Austria, and about 20 years ago, it was my turn to serve my 8 months. So any military details are useless as of today, as many things have changed. Some basic information needed to understand the story. To be allowed to enter the base, you had to have your military identity card. To be allowed to stay out during curfew, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., or to leave for the weekend and come back Monday morning, you required a special permission, a so-called Überzeitschein, literally overtime permission. Recruits with their own car who wanted to park inside the base needed a parking permit, the Einstellgenehmigung. Now to the actual story. I was assigned to a unit in our largest military base, a former US Army camp created after World War II, with place for up to 3,500 military personnel. The base is located on the outskirts of the city of Salzburg, near the airport and the German border, next to a much-traveled Autobahn highway. Back then, the base had no explicit guard unit. Guard duty was rotating between the different units, so every unit of the base had several turns per year. So 1 week before my time in the military was over, I and several other guys from my unit were selected for guard duty from Sunday to Monday. We were not happy about it because we had duty on Saturday also, which meant that most of us wouldn't be able to go home for the weekend. Well, orders are orders. There was nothing we could do about it, so in the evening, we started our guard duty. A night on guard duty is long and mostly boring, and gives you much time to think about different things. This night, I remembered an urban legend or rumor regarding the base sometimes brought up when goofing around. If the guard at the main entrance enforces all rules to the letter, he might be able to create a traffic jam on the highway. Well, I was the guard at the main entrance. I had the morning shift. It was Monday morning. I was still somewhat pissed about the missed weekend. I thought, if they want me to guard the entrance, I will guard it to the letter. Malicious compliance mode on. The base is on one side of the Autobahn. The city and the airport are on the other side. There's a 2-lane road connecting the base entrance with the city. The on and off ramps to the Autobahn are directly in front of the base, forming 2 crossing with the aforementioned road. 6 a.m. rolled around, and traffic started slowly trickling into the base. The first cars arrived, and I got into full compliance mode. Usually, if there was a car full of recruits, you checked the military identity card, and if one guy didn't have his card ready, and you knew some guy in the car, well, in you go. Not this time. There are 4 people in the car. I got to see 4 identity cards, 4 permissions for coming in late, the Überzeitschein, and 1 Einstellgenehmigung for the car. You don't have it ready? It is somewhere in a bag in the trunk? Well, fetch it. No permission for the car? Turn around and park elsewhere. I took all the papers in my hands, checked if the faces matched, checked for matching names in the permissions, correct number plate on the car. At around 7:30 a.m., I had just 4 cars queued up and thought, well, the rumor clearly was exaggerated, and oh boy, I was so wrong. While I was focused on checking the next car in the queue, had to fetch the papers from the trunk, something happened. The next thing I noticed was honking, a whole lot of honking, and as I looked, I saw a massive queue of cars has formed and was backing up the ramps onto the Autobahn, and another queue backing up in direction of the airport and the city. Holy f***. As soon as the first cars blocked one crossing, it was a matter of 2 to 3 minutes to a full-blown traffic jam. Few minutes later, everything was blocked by cars wanting to get into the base, people who wanted to exit the Autobahn to drive into the city or to the airport couldn't do it because the people wanting to get into the base were blocking everything. Also, the people couldn't leave the city because the traffic jam prevented them to getting to the ramps onto the Autobahn. Suddenly, the officer of the day, OVT, Offizier vom Tag, comes running out of the guardhouse shouting, "What are you doing? You can't do enhanced security checks now, it's Monday morning." He noticed because he was listening to the radio and the radio traffic service had mentioned a traffic jam at our base. Well, then something happened I will never forget. The OVT placed some guards on the first crossing inside the base who had to stop all traffic which wanted to leave the base. Then he made us open all the boom barriers, even the one usually reserved for big trucks. We basically created a 3-lane one-way into the base. I stood there, mouth agape, looking at the OVT who waved his traffic paddle like he was trying to impersonate a windmill. He looks back to me and the second guard and yells, "Don't just look, wave them in, all of them, now!" So we waved them in, all of them. Among them, my company commander and several sergeants of our unit. The looks on their faces were priceless. It took nearly half an hour until things settled down, but then the fun began again. This time from inside the base. We got all sorts of frantic tourists asking for the German border, mostly Italians, but also some Germans. All they could find were people in uniforms and fences all the way around and no way into Germany. Well, we very politely explained to them that we were a military base and not the German border. The best thing is, no one reprimanded me for that little stunt, not the OVT, not my company commander. But I sometimes still hear the rumor that once upon a time, a guard caused a traffic jam by just following the rules. I live in the town with Canada's largest Air Force base, and I can confirm that when the base is on lockdown, you cannot drive by for the backup of traffic of people trying to get into the base. Fortunately, ours isn't on a major highway. I can only imagine the backup this caused on the Autobahn. I'm glad there weren't any repercussions for OP, but I'm pretty sure they just got lucky in that situation. On to our next story, how to get an aircraft boarding gate removed. Let's jump right in. I have worked in aviation for nearly 20 years, from small airports to large commercial hubs. Like any industry, it is full of type A personalities and those promoted up to their respective level of incompetence. To protect those involved, I will not name the airport or the company I worked for. At the time this story occurred, I had worked my way up in a company that is contracted to pump the fuel into the aircraft at one of the busiest airports in the US. My job was the supervisor in charge of fuel quality and safety adherences. The airport I worked at was growing. It went from middle of the pack to being in the top 10 for total operations in about 3 years. As such, there was, and still is, a lot of construction going on in order to have more gates and parking areas. This has involved restriping the gates and adding more jet bridges onto the existing terminal. This usually is a pain, but works for the most part when there is only so much room to work with. For fueling, a hydrant system is commonly used as it is far faster and more convenient than having tanker trucks go up to every plane. Instead, a piece of equipment is staged at each gate and hooks up to a pit in the ground where fuel is delivered directly from the storage tanks and can be pumped into the plane. These are large underground pipes and once in place are rarely, if ever, moved. If you move your gate, that pit stays put and isn't as conveniently located as it first was. Might be too far away from the plane, might be under the plane, etc. When the airport authority decided to add a new gate at the end of a terminal, I was invited to the meeting thanks to my position. I guess I was expected to just sit and nod or something, since every time I pointed out that the new gate would put the pit under the jet or on the wrong side, I was basically told, "We will make it work," or "This is the only way we can do it." After being shut down a few times, I give up. 4 months of construction to expand the passenger waiting area and attach a jet bridge brings us to the first day of use. There is a ribbon cutting ceremony, and the first arrival is brought into the gate. The fueler calls me because he doesn't like how he had to run his hoses and wants me to sign off on his solution. I pull up and see that the pit is under the left engine, 737 fuel panel is on the right wing, so he has to run the pit hose under the fuselage, which is full of passengers. This hose is a 3-inch inner diameter and is capable of delivering around 800 gallons per minute. Equipment slows that down as appropriate per aircraft. Should a tug or anything hit that line, it will get bad and fast. I say there is no way we can use that pit, and there isn't another one to choose from. I advise the airline, and they say, use a truck then. I responded, we can't. The jet is within 20 feet of a wall of the terminal, and we can't get a truck in front. If we are behind the jet, we will block the taxi lane, and no aircraft are getting in or out of 8 gates. We can't safely fuel an aircraft at this gate. Well, you can imagine how this went over. Within 15 minutes, I have the highest level person in town for the airline, the airport duty manager, who brought a couple of airport police with him for some reason, my GM, and the manager for the baggage loaders all at the gate. I explain the issue and state that I will not allow fueling, as it isn't safe to run pressurized jet fuel under an aircraft, and that the pit is underneath the engine itself. Both of these violate numerous regulations. My GM looks at it and agrees. The airline head starts yelling, and the duty manager says he will have the fire department come look, and if they say it is good, we are responsible to fuel. Fire battalion chief comes up, hears the issue, and walks over to look. He then gets a rolling wheel measure and walks it from the pit to the building and then back to his truck. He comes back with a red tag and puts the pit permanently out of service as it was too close to the building. He tells everyone that as he sees it, there is no way to legally fuel at that gate as it is too close to the building and the fuel truck would block a fire escape path. For the next 2 months, the airline used the gate as overflow with no fuel, meaning they had to bring the plane in with enough fuel already or fuel it out on a cargo stand. Then, it was cordoned off and demolished, and then old lines were restored. Not sure how many millions that cost, but it had to be a few. This one just seems like it's an absolutely terrible executive team. They think they're all knowing and they'll just work it out, but they really should be listening to the people who are going to be using this equipment on a daily basis. This is why I strongly believe that executives of any company should at least spend a few days doing the jobs of the people below them, or at least spend some time talking to these people to get an idea of how things run at the lower levels. If they don't, then my question to these executives is, how can you manage something you've never done? I'd like to thank both of the OPs for posting their stories to the Malicious Compliance subreddit. You can visit them at the links in the description below. Please go there and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.